The gospel reading of today, the story of Jesus overturning the tables of the money changers in the temple, is one of my favorites. In it, Jesus expresses anger, something we can all relate to, and he does it with a memorable whoosh, overturning the tables of the money changers. In an act of civil disobedience, Jesus draws attention to an institutional issue that deeply disturbs him. The temple, which is meant to be a house of prayer for all nations, is not only not that at that time, but it had become a den of robbers. Now, you might not be surprised to learn that there is some debate about whether or not this particular story is fact, fiction, or some combination of the two. There are reasonable arguments to support all of these possibilities. Some say, given the vastness of the temple complex, this couldn't have happened. How could one person have caused so much disruption? And even if some type of disturbance did begin, the Roman authorities would have suppressed it long before it could have spread throughout the temple. Others claim that this story, which appears in all four Gospels, was invented as a literary device to move the story along. It provides a reason for Jesus to be arrested and stand trial. I don't need to know how much is fact or fiction, for the gospel stories to me are not a history lesson. Rather, they are stories that inspire me, sadden me, gladden me, confound me, and ultimately challenge me. And this story challenges me. When I was asked to preach today, and particularly to include reflections on the state of our contemporary institution of healthcare, this story leapt into my mind as the one that would capture everything I want to say. I would like to fill in some details that will hopefully make this story come alive for you too, and maybe inspire and challenge you in your own lives, in your own work. First of all, let us consider the city in which this story is set, Jerusalem. Jerusalem, according to the Bible, was where Abraham all but sacrificed his son Isaac. The story that has echoed down through Jewish folklore as the event because of which God would save Israel, the people descended from Abraham. This city is where King David, the man after God's own heart, set up his capital. This is where David's son Solomon built the temple where God was to be worshipped. This is the city which the Psalms sing about, beautiful Mount Zion, the joy of all the earth. This is the city the Babylonians destroyed. This is the city where grief and fresh hope have lived as neighbors for thousands of years. At the time of Jesus, the city was going through grief yet again, as it had been recently occupied by the Romans. As our story opens, Jesus and his disciples are traveling to Jerusalem for the celebration of Passover. Over 100,000 other Jewish people are making this pilgrimage at the same time, traveling in long caravans, several days' journey for the celebration. Jesus had, of course, made this trip before. Remember once when he was left behind here, preaching at age 12 in the temple? This, though, will be his final trip to Jerusalem. He is traveling now with his disciples who believe that he is the Messiah, the Anointed One. And they are traveling to the temple where kings are crowned, where the Jewish high court sits, where the authorities are. And certainly his claim to be king, to be the Messiah, will be challenged. Now let us consider the temple. The temple rests in the temple complex. From a bird's eye view, the temple complex is a huge rectangle, almost the size of the McAllister campus. It is 35 acres and built on a raised earthen mound and enclosed with a wall of stone. At the center of the temple complex was the majestic sanctuary, built of perfectly tooled and fitted white marble stones covered with heavy plates of gold. Inside the temple sanctuary were 2 rooms. The first was a large hall paneled in cedar, the finest cedar from Lebanon. It contained an altar for incense, a table for bread, and a menorah, all covered in the finest gold. The second room, the Holy of Holies, was separated from the first by a heavy linen curtain embroidered with spun gold. Only the high priest was allowed to enter this sacred spot, and he only on the Day of Atonement. Expanding outward from the temple sanctuary were various courts, which represented increasingly restricted access as they got closer and closer to the sanctuary. The nearest court was the court of priests, where only the priests could come. Further out was the court of men, where only the Jewish men could come. And yet further out was the court of women. The furthest court was the largest, the court of Gentiles. This was the public forum, the marketplace, the town square, the peanut gallery. This was where people came to buy animals to be used as sacrifice, to change their money to Jewish shekels so it could be used in the temple, to discuss religious matters, and to just hang out. The court of the Gentiles would be filled with tens of thousands of people during the holy days. If you were wealthy, you could buy a bull or a sheep here for sacrifice. If you were less wealthy, you could buy a dove. And in all likelihood, the money changers and the vendors made a profit on their business in the court of Gentiles. On a hill overlooking the temple grounds was Antonia's palace, a fortress built by the Romans to house 600 troops, alert and ready to respond to any disturbance in the temple, and connected to the temple by an underground walkway. As the gospel reads, then they came to Jerusalem. And he entered the temple, and he began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. Jesus essentially stopped commerce in the temple. He brought everything to a screeching halt. With no vendors, no money changers, and no ability to carry anything through the temple, business as usual would come to a halt. Why did Jesus do this? What provoked this action of civil disobedience? It says that Jesus was teaching as he did this, and this is what he said.